High tech, low tech, or no tech. Through our hobbies and our passions, the geek comes out in us all.
The world's of geekdom.
I am a geek and I'm proud of it.
Geeks.
Geeks unite.
Well, let's get those nerds! Nerds! No!
Did you just call me a nerd?
Not all geeks are nerds.
Yeah.
This is Geek Therapy Radio.
What are we waiting for?
And now your mental curator, Johnny Hamburger.
Welcome to Geek Therapy Radio. I am your mental curator extraordinaire, Johnny Hamburger. Welcome in. I'm so happy that you're listening or that you're watching on YouTube or wherever this video winds up. I've got actually a pretty massive show this week. Here's some things you could look forward to. In the next segment here, my longest segment because I need all the time in the world for it, 11 minutes total. I've got my tribute to Aretha Franklin. Aretha Franklin passed away today as of recording this episode of Geek Therapy Radio, August 16th. I was about to say 1918. 2018. Could you imagine if it was recorded in 1918? This is pretty great sound quality for 1918. So anyways, August 16, 2018, Aretha Franklin has passed away. So in the next segment, I've got my tribute. It's going to be kind of a biography of her life, crammed into about 11 minutes. I got some songs in there, like some cuts from some songs. It's a really good segment, so stick around for that. After that, I've got the top 10 baseball stadiums, baseball parks, and the worst 10 baseball parks. And surprise, little spoiler alert, Minute Maid didn't make either of those lists, which I thought was shocking, but we'll get into that later in the show. So Minute Maid, you got some other things going on, but I'm going to get right into it first before I tell you to go subscribe to Geek Therapy Radio on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube. You know all that by now. I won't spend much time on it. I want to get into the meat and potatoes. It's one of my favorite sayings now, meat and potatoes of this segment. Regarding Nvidia, the graphics card maker Nvidia, and most importantly right now, more details, including a release date of the GeForce RTX 2080. What happened to the GTX? You know what? I don't... It's such a quagmire, even still, right now, of specs and speculations regarding the RTX 2080. But we'll get into it, and I'll even explain a little bit what ray tracing is. In layman's terms, I guess, I'll explain what ray tracing is, because that's supposedly a big proponent of the new RTX 2080. Supposedly it's not going to be called the 1180. If you listen to a few shows back when I was in Virginia, we didn't know whether it was going to be we thought it was just going to be GTX. So the RTX is kind of a change. You know what? Let me just get into it. The RTX 2080 is expected to be released August 20th. Now, remember when I said there's so much specs and speculation out there? Depending on when you're listening to this podcast or radio show, the date it airs, we are within a window of about 5 days, 4 days, less than 5 days to less than 24 hours. So if you're listening to the broadcast, it's probably less than 24 hours away. If you're listening to the podcast, it's just a couple days away. And if you're watching on YouTube, God knows. It's probably already happened. By the time you're watching this, honestly, it's probably already occurred. But let's get into it. August 20th, they're saying, for the RTX 2080. There's speculations here. One of the speculations is on the price. Apparently, it's going to cost $649 US, which puts it a little bit under the current GTX 1080 Ti. Is it confusing? Is it getting much more confusing for you now? It's really... It's a quagmire right now. Let's talk a little bit about specs. I sound like Rick from Rick and Morty. Let's talk about... Bleh. I just started watching Rick and Morty, by the way. Isn't that crazy? So, anyways, a little bit of specs for the RTX 2080, and then I'll mention some specs for the RTX 2080 Ti. What a milieu. What a quagmire. Let's actually very briefly talk about the specs of the 2080 Ti, because I already talked about the specs of the 2080 back in episode 59 of GTR. So, real quick, the important specs here are CUDA cores come in at 4,352. The Ti outgoing had 3,584, so significant bump in CUDA cores. Memory speed, core clock is actually a little bit lower. Core clock and boost clock is actually a little bit lower at 1,350, boost up to 1,500. We got the same memory interface. We have 11 gigabytes of GDDR6 now. The outgoing is 5x. Memory speed 14 gigabits per second. Memory bandwidth 616 gigabytes per second. And still there is no launch dates right now. It's to be announced for the 2080 Ti. Real quick, let's talk about what ray tracing is. The average single frame of a movie with a lot of CGI in it, so like the last Avengers Infinity War, the average frame, one frame of that movie, of the CGI elements, can take up to 10 hours to render. One frame, not 1 minute, one frame, 10 hours. Ray tracing is a very hard thing to do, and basically what ray tracing is, sorry if I'm talking so fast, but the segment's almost over. Thank you, new time limits. Ray tracing is basically calculating the reflective light off of different surfaces. So if you're shining a flashlight on a wall and there's a flower nearby the wall, it's calculating the light bouncing off the wall onto the flower. Now multiply that by about 1 billion different colors and 1 billion different surface dimensions, and you got ray tracing. But with that, we'll be right back with my tribute to Aretha Franklin right here on Geek Therapy Radio.
Who among us doesn't love great beer, amazing food, and arcade games? That's why I'm stoked beyond geek belief to tell you about Kung Fu Saloon, located at 5317 Washington Avenue, right here in Houston. Kung Fu Saloon on Washington Avenue has the geek trinity covered, and then some. Of course they have the most excellent beer on tap, the nomiest food off the grill, and the vintage arcade games we love. But you can also get your Tay-Tay on with karaoke, your super fan on with televised sports, and your rug cut to the best music and DJs on Washington Avenue. In addition to arcade games, get your competitive fix with Giant Jenga, Giant Connect 4, 3 skee-ball lanes, shuffleboard, and foosball. Get your drink, food, game, karaoke, and dance on. Or step to Street Fighter 2 with me and get your geek fanny served. Hadouken! Kung Fu Saloon, 5317 Washington Avenue. Visit www.kungfusaloonhouston.com for more details and dress code info. Welcome back to Geek Therapy Radio. I'm Johnny Hemberger, your mental curator. Let's get right in to my tribute to the late, great Aretha Franklin, who passed away today, August 16th, 2018, in Detroit. Aretha had 50 top 40 hits, over 20 number 1 R&B hits. That's incredible. She also had 18 Grammys. But let's delve into a little bit more of her life. She was born March 25th, 1942, and arguably had music in her blood. She was born in Memphis, Tennessee, widely regarded as a mecca of blues and rock and roll, by the way. Her parents were both singers. Her father was a Baptist minister and gospel singer, most famously known as the man with the $1 million voice. Her mother died when she was 10, and this would be the first in a long life of heartbreak. So anyways, by the mid-50s, she was playing piano. So maybe about 10 years old-ish. She was singing and even touring the gospel circuit with her father. And it was around this time that she got well acquainted with other top singers of the era, as well as civil rights leaders, including Martin Luther King Jr. and Jesse Jackson. In 1956, at 14, she was a young mother, and she gave birth to her first son, Clarence, and released also her first album that year. The same year, a gospel record called Songs of Faith. 2 years later, she gave birth to her second son, Edward. In 1960, she signed with Columbia Records and moved to New York City to begin her new music career, and she experienced only some success with Columbia Records. For instance, in 1961, she married a man named Ted White and had her first song to reach the top 40. So her little moderate success here. First song reached top 40, a song called Rockabye Your Baby with a Dixie melody.
Cradle and mine, right on that Mason Dixie line, and swing it from Virginia to Tennessee with all the heart that's in ya. Weep no more, my lady.
Awesome. In 1966, her career really took off after signing with Atlantic Records. So she jumped record companies, working with producer Jerry Wexler and backed by the mother freaking Muscle Shoals rhythm section. She reached the top 10 in 1967's I Never Loved a Man the Way I Love You.
You're no good, heartbreaker. You're a liar and you're a cheat.
Another great one. In 1968 was one of her best years yet, releasing many iconic hits that routinely stuck in I can't even talk today. She released many iconic hits that routinely get stuck in even our modern general public's minds, including this little gem.
What you want?
Now that song is great, but of even more importance, it is around this time, at the height of the civil rights movement, that she became a symbol of pride for the movement and a monument of strength for the budding feminist movement. Now, despite the highs during this time, she experienced lows of equal significance, including arrests for erratic driving and what other things, developing a problem with alcohol, and the divorce from her first husband, Ted White, who unfortunately had since become abusive in the time of their marriage. Though through the 70s, her professional life enjoyed many, many more successes. She also married actor Glynn Turman, whom she later divorced in 1984, and during this time in the 70s, she gave birth to her fourth son. She had 4 sons in total. At the end of the disco craze, she released a disco album called La Diva, which failed miserably. The same year, her father was shot in a home invasion, unfortunately, and he didn't die during the home invasion, but he would die years later from complications of those injuries. So her life outside of music wasn't so great. She was not a stranger to heartache and heartbreak. Moving on, she enjoyed more musical success. Talking's hard. She enjoyed more musical success and chart toppers throughout the 80s. That's incredible. And even appeared in the Blues Brothers movie. In 1987, she became the first woman inducted to the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. The first woman inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. That is a milestone. That's incredible. Through the 90s, she enjoyed more success, and yet another top 40 hit with 1996's A Rose Is Still a Rose.
There was a rose I knew I met her once or twice before. She was a pretty sweet thing, not the least bit insecure. Then you came with your stick game and played with her you. Unashamed of the way you lied and played with a trap.
She published her autobiography at the end of the 90s in 1999. Now, in 2005, President George W. Bush, history lesson, he was the president at that time, he awarded her with the Presidential Medal of Freedom. And I would assume that this is presumably, talking is so hard, presumably not only for her musical track record, but also her instrumental role in the civil rights movement. Until the very end, Aretha worked and sung her heart out, appearing on the top charts for over 5 decades, 50 years. 50 years, every decade, she had songs on the top of the charts. And she was also the first woman to have 100 songs on the R&B charts. 100 songs. Man or woman, I don't care who you are, that's nearly impossible to do. Drake, I think, is gonna... Anyways, moving on. Though pancreatic cancer has taken her from us, she leaves behind a legacy that will thrill and inspire humanity, I have no doubt, for millennia to come. That's a big, important thing that I just said there. Aretha is not somebody that we're just going to forget about. It's not... There's some celebrities and some people who pass away that... I don't want to say that are ever forgotten, but I don't think that Aretha's flame is really ever going to burn out. Sure, it may kind of subside, but I don't think it's going to subside lower than it was in the 80s or even the late 70s. I think Aretha is going to be... Mark my words, there's going to be another song with Aretha in it. Maybe an unreleased original song from back in the day, maybe something like that. But there's going to be a song with Aretha in it that tops the charts. Remember when Elvis, decades after Elvis died, there a little less conversation. That song came out. That was remixed and became, was that like a number one song? I think it became number one. So I have no doubt in my mind that Aretha Franklin is going to continue to top the charts post-mortem. No doubt in my mind. Rest in peace, Aretha Franklin. You will be dearly missed. And again, I gotta say it, not just for your music. She was an incredible woman. I'm not gonna pretend to say that I listen to Aretha every single day, but I thoroughly enjoyed her music. It doesn't, as someone said, it doesn't matter the temperature. When you listen to Aretha Franklin, you get chills. Her voice is just iconic and will be remembered for thousands of years. As long as we have devices to play back music, she'll be remembered. More Geek Therapy Radio coming up. Stick around. Welcome back to Geek Therapy Radio. Still your mental curator, Johnny Hemberger. I hope you appreciated my tribute to Aretha Franklin. As you can hear by the music playing right now, this is going to be the top 10 lists of the best and then the top 10 worst baseball stadiums in Major League Baseball. I can already tell that this segment's going to piss me off a little bit, and it's probably going to piss you off a little bit. This is according to Popular Mechanics, so I'm interested to know if you're watching this on YouTube, on YouTube, comment below what you think should be in this list. What your top 10 list is, or what any top 3. I don't know if you even care about 10 baseball stadiums or baseball stadiums at all. But let me know what your list for top whatever baseball stadiums are after I go through this list from Popular Mechanics. And it kind of pissed me off. And I'm going to tell you, Houston fans. I reside in Houston, for those of you who don't know. Geek Therapy Radio broadcast here in Houston, a city of over 6 million people. I would have thought that Minute Maid Park, where the Astros play, would have definitely been in the top 10. I think it also might have been top 5. I think that it had a shouting chance of being top 3. No. Do you know where Popular Mechanics rated Minute Maid Park out of 30? Number 20. Minute Maid was 20. Like somewhere in the middle of the pack, basically, of top 30 ballparks. I don't know what to put it. Like I said, I think it was top 10. I think it might possibly be top 5. And I think that Popular Mechanics had its head up its butt when considering Minute Maid Park. Minute Maid Park's wonderful. Although I think it was better with Taos Field, with the slope in center field. Was it Taos? Whatever. When we had that actual like incline in center field. Let's get on to it. This is going to be the top 10 in order from bad to worst, according to Popular Mechanics. So this is bad to worst. Number 10, Philadelphia Phillies Citizens Bank Park. It was built in 2004. I can't really comment on this. I've not been to Citizens Bank Park. It looks like a decent park, but apparently, going bad to worst, number 10, it is bad. Number 9, Miami Marlins. I remember when they were the Florida Marlins. Marlins Park. Marlins Park was built in 2012. I remember when the Marlins were an expansion team, and I still consider them in my heart and my brain to be an expansion team. I remember when they came to the Astrodome to play the Astros, to play the Astros. What was that, 92, 93 or so? Bagwell was on the team, Biggio, Caminetti. Getting ahead of myself here. Marlins Park is number 9 on the list of bad to worst baseball stadiums according to Popular Mechanics. All right. Number 8 is going to be Cincinnati Reds, Great American Ballpark. It was built in 2003. 42,000 seats. I've never been to it. It looks okay, but on this list, it is number 8 on this list of bad to worst. Number 7. Texas Rangers Globe Life Park. I remember when it was just called the ballpark in Arlington. I still like the ballpark in Arlington. I still think it's quite beautiful. The only bad thing about it was, for some reason, which I'm sure there's a reason, there's no roof on it. A baseball stadium in Texas, in a game that's played primarily through the summertime. Why on God's green earth would you not put a roof on a baseball stadium in Texas? I understand Chicago. I understand Wrigley Field. I get it. I understand Yankee Stadium. Got it. Fenway. But why, in God's name, would you not put a roof on it in Texas? So that was number 7. Moving on to number 6, from bad to worse. Washington Nationals National Park. It looks, I guess, I don't know. The stadium itself doesn't look particularly awe-inspiring. It opened in 2008, and you can see, I think you're supposed to be able to see the Washington Monument and the Capitol. Yeah, there's not much to say about it. That's probably why it's number 6. Number 5 is going to be Arizona Diamondbacks Chase Field. I don't know. I've never been to it. I don't even know when it opened. But there you have it. It's number 5, right in the middle of the pack. Number 4, from bad to worst, Angel Stadium for the Los Angeles Angels. That makes sense. It doesn't look particularly great, even though it has those rock features out there, center field-ish, left center. I think it looks neat. It was technically built in 1966, but as we know it now, it was 1998. That's probably when they put those rock features in, if I'm not mistaken. So Angel Stadium. Remember that movie? That movie. Moving on, number 3 worst, and I think I think it should be number 2, actually. But the number 3 worst is Tampa Bay Rays Tropicana Field. God-awful eyesore of a stadium. And anytime you watch a game, the Tampa Bay Rays could win the World Series, and there'll still be only 4 people in that stadium total at any given time. Guaranteed. It opened in 1990. Just stupid. I don't want to talk about it anymore. Number 2, Chicago White Sox Guaranteed Rate Field. It just looks unspectacular. Built in 1991. There was kind of an era in ballpark construction. In the 90s and 80s and 90s and probably 70s, were probably like the worst. We didn't start making our new ballparks look kind of retro until the early 2000s or around 1999, late 90s. But early 2000s, that's when anybody started building a ballpark since 2000, starting with Minute Maid Park, I think. That's when ballpark design got way more interesting. But number 2, still, Chicago White Sox Guaranteed Rate Field. Number 1, and I do agree with the number 1 worst ballpark on this list, Oakland A's, Oakland Alameda Company Coliseum. The Oakland A's share this stadium with the Raiders. The Raiders already have 1 foot out the door. So as they're going, I think they're going to Las Vegas, but this is not a sports show necessarily. So yeah, it's horrible. You know what? I would actually put the Tampa Bay Rays in number 1 and Raiders second. At least what the Oakland A's, Oakland Alameda Coliseum has going for it, that's semi-interesting, is the fact that it's a dual-use stadium, which I think can put in at number 2, and then put Tampa Bay Rays at number 1. Tropicana Field is number 3. Move Tropicana Field to number 1, and I think you've got it. Number 1 worst, and put the Oakland A's stadium at 2nd, and then put the Chicago White Sox at 3rd. I think that'd be good for in order from bad to worst. Those are the top 10. Let's move on to the actual top 10 best. And again, Minute Maid Park, surprisingly to not just me in Houston, but to a lot of people's recollection, is probably a mistake. Once again, I think Minute Maid's top 10, top 5, possibly top 3. But let's go to the top 10 baseball stadiums according to the nerds at Popular Mechanics. Number 10, New York Yankees Yankee Stadium, the new one. Did they have to leave the old Yankee Stadium? I don't know. Number 10, Yankee Stadium, the new Yankee Stadium. Number 9, Chicago Cubs Wrigley Field. That's just iconic. I think Wrigley should be maybe moved up a little bit. But number 9, Wrigley's Field, it was opened way back in 1914. Number 8, St. Louis Cardinals Busch Stadium. It has a great view of the arch, and they mow an arch into the outfield, so that's neat too. What else here? Number 7, I'm going to speed through this. Number 7, Chicago San Diego Padres Petco Park. Number 6, Kansas City Royals Kauffman Stadium. Number 5, Baltimore Orioles Oriole Park at Camden Yards. 4, Boston Red Sox Fenway. I would rank that number 1 or 2. I love Fenway, and Fenway is the second to last of the iconic parks. It was actually built before Wrigley Field. It was built in 1912, opened in 1912. What else here? San Francisco AT&T Park. Number 2, Los Angeles Dodgers Stadium. Okay, whatever. The number 1 stadium, according to Popular Mechanics, is for a team that nobody cares about, but I agree has a gorgeous stadium with a gorgeous view. Pittsburgh Pirates, PNC Park. On the way out here, I'm going to play Dropkick Murphys because I have a Boston heritage and I love the Boston Red Sox, and also because screw you, I can play what I want. Don't blame us if we have a doubt. You know we could have lived without Boston, you are the only. Don't blame us if we have a doubt. You know we could have lived without Red Sox, you are the only. Welcome back to Geek Therapy Radio, your mental curator, Johnny Hemberger. And I just wanted to take this time now in the last segment to thank you for bearing with me for the past couple shows. And I don't mean that I've been traveling. I mean that we've changed formats here at KPRC. Not changed formats, sorry. No, we have not changed formats. We've changed clocks. The clocks of our shows are all uniform now, which means that my segments are now strictly hard time limited to the following times. The first segment
must be 8 minutes. The second segment is 10 minutes. Third segment is 11 minutes. Fourth segment is 10 minutes. All exactly and unwavering. And I say thank you for bearing with me through this change because it's difficult to have to meet those exact times. One of the things I like to do on this show, on Geek Therapy Radio, was not feel bogged down by the constraints of hard times. For instance, the last interview I did was with Lights, and that interview went on on the broadcast radio. I whittled it down to 15 minutes or so. Can't happen anymore. That first segment has to be 8 minutes. So it's going to make doing interviews in the future interesting. I'm going to have to ask my guests to work with me a little bit in the time constraints and either continue on to the second segment or just save it for the second and third segment or just save it for the third segment. I'm not sure how that's going to work with the headline guest. Headline guest this week, but he or she's in the third segment. So these are all things that I kind of have to work around, and it's probably going to take me a few shows to get in the groove. Today, sorry for this being kind of the house cleaning segment, but we'll get on to some geek news of the week. Today was particularly difficult. I just got back yesterday into the country, and Aretha Franklin died today, this afternoon, which means, of course, I'm going to do a segment on it. But that was difficult. That was really nerve-wracking and difficult because of the way I did it. You heard me do it. I made a little, some notes, and then I peppered in those songs, and it took so much energy to figure out how to make it all fit with the time. I had 10 minutes front to back for that segment to make all of that work, and it's going to take me a little while to get used to. And I'm not complaining about it. I like that all the shows are uniform now. But again, it's just different. Change isn't necessarily bad. It's just different. It's just something to get used to. That being said, once again, thank you all for bearing with me and being fans. I love when I put up a show and I can see that I have the bulk of my listens happen within those first few hours, which is great because that means I have subscribers. The subscribers are listening immediately when I post the show, and then anything extra I get are new people. So thank you for subscribing to Geek Therapy Radio. I mean that from the bottom of my heart. Let's get on to geek news, and I think I'm going to kind of call a segment like this. What was I going to... Open tab tidbits. These are all the open tabs in my Chrome browser that I didn't devote entire dedicated segments to. So here's this. It's time now for Geek Therapy Radio's open tab tidbits. First tab from newatlas.com. Lifeguard drone rescues swimmer in Spain. So I guess they used a little drone to drop some supplies to swimmers. And drones. This lifeguard drone was able to perform the rescue, and that's really great. Isn't that really neat? Moving on, since we don't have a lot of time at open tabs tidbits or whatever the heck I just called it. Next tab would be that Intel has put its new Cannon Lake processors into a new NUC. Previously, it was only in one laptop. What does that mean? Why is that important? Because Cannon Lake is a 10 millimeter. It's a 10 millimeter die. It's used on a 10 millimeter manufacturing process. Means the chip can be smaller, more efficient, pack more power into a smaller space. And Intel has had a notoriously hard time rolling out this new architecture. But now they've added the chip into a new NUC, and that is wonderful. Next tab tidbit. We have learned that embalming has taken place 1,500 years before the pharaohs. So 1,500 years before we previously thought embalming started. And that's very interesting. Next tab. Alexa and Cortana are starting their integration. Alexa, stop. I forgot that I can't say Alexa without triggering the actual Alexa. So, anyways, Alexa and Cortana are merging now. As of today, me recording this August 16th, the day Aretha Franklin dies, I always shut off Cortana. I never use Cortana. What's the point? This integration raises some questions. Are you going to have to ask the same device 2 different names to access the functions of said service? Am I going to have to say, hey, Alexa, or hey, Cortana? Or is it going to merge into one thing? Just ask the device one thing. Who knows? That's to be determined. All I know is that they're integrating as far as today. So Cortana is going to be built into your Alexa. Next tidbit. Lenovo has a new 15-inch laptop, new workstation that's very slim, has a Xeon processor, 64 gigabytes of ECC RAM, and a 4 terabyte SSD crammed into 0.7 inches. So it's basically a thin and light Xeon-powered 64 gigabyte ECC RAM laptop. Remember the old days looking through like computer catalogs and just kind of specking out the most powerful computer you possibly could? That's what this reminds me of. And I spec'd out, there's no price estimate on this yet. Lenovo, IBM has just announced that this is coming out. Is Lenovo IBM? I am completely blanking out. Regardless, I priced out a previous generation to kind of get an idea of how much this new one would cost, and the max I was able to get the previous generation was up to about $5,500, $5,500 for the current generation laptop workstation, spec'd out completely. I say that to say this: the new MacBook Pro 2018 15-inch costs $6,700, over $1,000 more expensive for something that is crippled by physics. That's a whole nother thing. Next tidbit. You know how in California there's cancer warnings on friggin' everything? Well, now people are getting tired of it. There's some uproar over coffee. California slapped a may cause cancer sticker on some coffee or something like that. And it's just ridiculous. The nanny state is just getting absolutely ridiculous in California. California's the state that's like the sniveling kid allergic to everything, who reminds the teacher, "But teacher, you forgot to give us homework." Sorry, California friends. I lived in California. I do love the state of California and the beauty inherent in the state, but my goodness, your laws are jacked up. Finally, people haven't had enough of it. Nintendo Switch. We've discovered that Nintendo may have been dabbling with a VR mode, a virtual reality mode after all. In a recent firmware update, some hackers found a VR mode enable and disable switch within the Switch, a code switch, and that makes you wonder, what was Nintendo is pretty quiet about VR since the Virtual Boy, obviously. So who knows what's in store for the Switch. Yes, the graphics aren't that great. Yes, the resolution isn't that great, but I would personally like to see some dabbling in VR. That's going to do it for Geek Therapy Radio. Be good to yourselves. That's the best way to be good to others. Thank you for listening. Thank you for subscribing, and that's all I got to say. Next week's a new week. I'll see you all next week. Take care.